welcome to another episode of Truck Camper Cooking. My name is Michael. I'm in the back of my all-aluminum homemade truck camper, and in today's video I'm going to review how I make coffee. Now there's a lot of ways that you can make a camp coffee or a truck camper coffee, various different cooking setups for your water, how you use the beans. And what I'm going to show you today is a very simple method, but it is a method that I very much enjoy. It is portable, compact, it stores well, and I think it makes a good cup of coffee. So let's get right into today's video. So before I can make the cup of coffee, I want to get out all of my ingredients and supplies. First, I'm going to grab the milk from the fridge. Next thing I gotta grab is the cup. I pretty much keep all of my kitchen items stored in these plastic drawers. Pretty much anything I need to cook with, but for right now all I need is a cup, so let's get that out. Alright, the next few items I keep nicely stored in some 3D printed cubbies that I made for the truck camper specifically. These are all designed around the product itself. So I have my JetBoil, the isobutane gas mix, and some ground coffee. I really enjoy having everything stored in these cubbies. It keeps it secure while driving, and it's very easy to grab. Just gonna grab the coffee and the JetBoil supplies, and we can get to the actual brew. One final thing is a lighter. Now the JetBoil does have a built-in ignition system. However, my JetBoil is about 12 to 15 years old, and that igniter is not always working the best. So I do keep a lighter, and I'll show you guys over here some more of my 3D printed storage. All right, and one of the final pieces of the puzzle is the actual coffee method. Now I'm going to be using a pour over. So in the front of my kitchen area here, I have a silicone foldable pour over. I really enjoy how this is silicone, unbreakable, it is easy to clean, and frankly, this method of pour over makes a good cup of coffee. So I have my pour over, and finally I have a small paper filter. So one thing I really like about using the JetBoil and Pour Over method is how portable and compact this is. There's a lot of different ways that you can make coffee in a camp situation like this, and it could be a French press, it could be a percolator, it could be a Keurig plug-in, it could be some type of portable espresso device. Now all of those are fine. At the end of the day, I have a simple stove, I have a paper filter within a foldable silicone pour over, and the act of cleaning and using and enjoying the coffee is all very straightforward. To me, that makes it ideal for coffee on the road or coffee while camping. So I will show you what I was talking about with the igniter system. It does have a igniter, however it's not always perfect. So just in case, I have a lighter at the ready, but we'll give it a try. So while the water is heating up, I'm going to get my grounds into the pour over system. These are one of my favorite cups. It is a Stanley insulated pint cup. So it has the classic Stanley hammered finish in the green color. The inside is all metal, and it is a dual wall pint cup, which I find to be a very enjoyable cup to make coffee with. I try to have a variety of different types of coffee beans and coffee grounds. At home, I do make a lot of espressos, but while on the road or camping, traveling, I do tend to have ground coffee and try to have some variety. I'd get some Peet's coffee, maybe something local. Today, this one caught my eye and it sounds fun, so I went with this. We're gonna give it a fair shot. All right, I think the water is boiled just enough. I'm gonna go ahead and shut off the stove, let it rest for a minute, and then we can get the pour over in action. I don't have too much of a preference of what I put in coffee. I tend to keep it fairly simple, not huge on the sweet side. Typically just some type of dairy, whether it's whole, 2% milk, half and half, creamer. Just nice to have a little splash. I'm not opposed to black coffee. However, I do enjoy a little bit of dairy with it. All right, I have my coffee grounds in the pour over. I don't do anything too scientific with this. I don't weigh it or use any type of scoop. I just eyeball pour the grounds in and go from there. On the flip side, with the act of pouring the water, there is one thing that I do. And I think it's fairly common in the pour over mindset, but if you are making a pour over coffee, it is good to let the grounds bloom. So what I do is I pour the water just enough to coat the beans and let the CO2 escape, basically. At least that is how I understand it. So just about enough water to coat the beans and let some of the gases escape. For anybody wondering, I am in a vented camper, so I have my side window open and the rooftop vent fan is open and on. So I have a nice cross breeze through the camper. I have used this stove as well as a butane stove for a couple years now inside this camper, and I've never had an issue. I do have a carbon monoxide alarm, and I pretty much make sure to always have a good flow of air through the camper. All right, that initial pour is complete. So now the fun part of just pouring the whole cup of coffee. All right, that is it for the pouring of the water. I'm just gonna get a few things out of the way, let it finish dripping, and show you my next steps. So one of the must-have items in a small camper like this, especially if you're doing any type of cooking or making of coffee, any type of traveling, is a trash can. Having a trash can in the camper is a game changer. It keeps everything out of the way. You don't always have to search for where to put your trash. It's a simple thing, but highly recommend. All right, and that is basically it. That is how I make a pour over coffee. When I'm done making the coffee, I set my silicone dripper in my sink. We'll get to that later. Honestly, you can just rinse it out and dry it. It is not a piece that gets heavily dirty. And just like that, I don't have to deal with cleaning anything extensive. Storage-wise, it is very simple. You can use a JetBoil stove for multi-purpose, whether you're cooking an actual meal with it, just heating up water. So that is pretty much why I chose exclusively to make pour over coffees in here. Someday it might be fun to get a little bit more elaborate. However, when you do that, you sacrifice space and storage. So it's always a double-edged sword as far as elevating the way you make something while keeping it manageable and compact. So that is enough talking. Let's get right into enjoying this cup of coffee. Cheers. Definitely need to make a few cups of coffee before I were to judge this bag. However, initial impressions seem like a pretty good cup of coffee. I'm going to spend some time enjoying my cup. I want to say a big thank you guys for joining in and watching me make a cup of coffee. It's been really fun to review how I make it. If you guys have any questions on the current setup of coffee making or anything you saw in the camper, let me know. Also, drop a comment down below of what your favorite way to make coffee is on the road. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.